How's everybody doing? I went through a lot just now trying to figure out where I wanted to do this at, my next story. And it turns out I'm extremely picky when it comes to that. I if I'm going to be talking like I am now, I kind of want privacy and I kind of want a place that I can walk. I apparently don't like sitting down and just speaking in one spot. I don't know if that's just a thing with me or what, but the best that I can think is that it's as close as it's going to get as far as familiarity and all the time I spent dwelling on my own thoughts in prison. It's kind of funny, isn't it? We have so much. I just want it simple, and I don't need a lot like my girl has. She got me this really nice gimbal. It's a thing that, the camera sits on and it'll like turn on its own. And no matter how you move your arm, it's going to stay level and shit. And I picked it up and I tried to figure, I tried to figure it out and stuff. And I just can't, it's just a lot of buttons. It looks expensive and, you know, it's kind of heavy too. I think you don't want to be carrying that. I think you can, but not for 30, 40 minutes like I usually end up doing. But yeah, I guess we're gonna do it right here in the garage. So sorry about that if that bugs anybody for any reason. But and I got a house full of dogs. If I go downstairs where it's nice and cool, the puppies are going to be whining and whimpering, wanting to be held, wanting to be played with, something. And then I got three grown adult dogs, a husky, a German Shepherd, and a pit mix. So if I go in there, they're gonna want to, you know, touch the camera with their nose and try to stand over me and stand in front of me. I really don't have a lot of time to like, you know, go full blown streamer or live streamer or I got a computer desk and all that stuff, but how often am I ever alone here to the point where I don't get other people into the frame and stuff because that's something that I don't want to do is put other people, place other people within a space where they can be recognized and brought into something that has nothing to do with them. Like my past. My past is a perfect reason why I won't, put people that are close to me on camera. Not within the same space as what I'm talking about, you know what I mean? But my past is definitely something that I always have to consider now. The more I make videos, the more TikToks I make, the more shorts. I haven't told you guys, and it's because it's a good thing. But if anybody ever went back through all the comments of mainly my TikTok videos, some of my YouTube videos, but mainly my TikTok videos, there are people that have been locked up with me that are finding me every week. Every week, somebody I was locked up with says something to me. And I can guarantee you, for every one that does say something, there's probably two or three more that are at least watching silently. And they are. I know they are because one of the people that was involved in the Beaumont incident had reached out to me in the comments. And he just said some shit like, what did he say? He was just like, hey, I was locked up with you in Texas Beaumont USP. And that was it. That was just the whole comment. you know? And so I responded back and I said, I was like, oh, that's what's up. I said, when did you get out? what unit were you in? And he said, D unit. And I remember what unit that was. It was on the very opposite end of me. And, and it was like weeks later before I was just going through the comments and trying to respond to anybody that I missed over, the work day and stuff. And I seen he had responded. And that's when he told me he was in D unit. Yeah. And so when I remembered what unit that was and where most of my opposition was at that time, I clicked on his profile. And when I clicked on his profile, it brought up a picture. And I remembered him. I remembered exactly who he was. And so I said that to him. I said, "Oh, I remember you now." I said, "How you been, man? Staying out of trouble? Trying to stay free? Hope all is well with you." And nothing was ever said after that. But I don't imagine that he would be in direct contact with the guy we stabbed up in that incident. But you never know, right? I have to operate on the assumption that direct friends, if not my enemy himself, is at least aware of where to find me in the digital realm. So I imagine they're watching. Yeah. And I knew that would happen. I knew that would happen. It's not something I haven't accounted for. And the thing about all that is everything will eventually come to light. Everything that I've done, everything that I've ever had to answer for, everything that I am proud of or am not proud of, it will all come to light. I'm sharing it with all of you now over the last few months, and I have always spoken and operated as though the people that were directly involved will eventually see it. You know, and it's kind of funny to say it like that because you would have to assume on some level that you would get large enough, to be found. Because as a regular, just a regular dude, you're a needle in a haystack. But if for some reason there is something noteworthy of you, people are going to notice. And then more and more, and then consistency has a lot to do with that too. And I will, for better or for worse, I'm going to be loading on this channel until something happens to me, God forbid. But I have always assumed that I will be known. And so this is a story for my 500 sub mark. And the reason why this particular story is going to be for my 500 sub mark is because I only have a couple of these, literally two. I only have two of these stories, and y'all have already heard one. And so that's what makes it significant, or that's what makes it special. The more there is of one thing, the less in value it has. But when there's only one of a kind or two of a kind, those things they're irreplaceable. As far as prison is concerned, I only have two instances where people moved on me. And in neither one of those cases was it for anything bogus that I did or anything bogus that I said. I wasn't in the wrong, put it that way. I wasn't in the wrong. And that's how you know that prison is not, it's not a place that operates on what's right and what's wrong. There's what's beneficial to the group, what's beneficial to the orderly running of the yard, what's beneficial to whoever runs the yard. Sometimes they will employ their own agenda and make sure that nobody that shows up can interfere with that, with them hiding or their bogus ways or their, sometimes people do some fucked up shit and the group just won't say anything. They won't say anything at all because everybody is afraid that they'll be next, which can and does happen. But I was moved on again right after I left Big Sandy, and this was in Atlanta. And up until Big Sandy, it was not required of me to let people know what I was or what my goal was. My goals, my agenda, my mission. Ultimately, my mission was to make it so that we could get a foothold in just the yard. And the only way you can do that is by participating in the politics. And so there's really no better way to control the politics of the yard other than to just, take over. And that's not something that, I thought I could do. It just kind of ended up working out like that. And I did, there's a couple of yards I got to, and I got it so that the only thing I was able to do really was to make sure that whoever had beef with us saw us one on one. There wasn't going to be no jumping somebody as soon as they get off the yard and send 3 or 4 guys after them. None of that shit happened on my watch. If somebody doesn't want this person to walk, then you go see him. You're not going to bring anybody else with you. You're not going to jump him. If you two don't like each other and you don't get along or whatever it is, go see each other head up. Winner stays, loser goes. That's the best I was going to do. That's the best I was going to do. And I never really had to do that. There was only a couple times where I had to make sure that, everything went down the way it was supposed to go down. But in Big Sandy, I was ousted, right? They finally caught on to the fact that I was Warrior Society. And now it was public knowledge. Up until that point, nobody knew. Nobody knew. And it's kind of, it's super fucking sketchy living like that. That's exactly why I ended up making so much progress in my PTSD therapy, because I started watching 60 Days In. And 60 Days In is the whole time, it's just a countdown, right? It's a countdown until these people are discovered. And when they're discovered, bad things happen. And it's literally, it was just it perfectly encapsulated what it was like living for me, right? Most of my time in the USPs was kind of spent waiting to see when people would find out that I was a gang member. And that changed after Big Sandy because now I was no longer able to go under the radar. The point of being under the radar is so that I could get close or next to people that were on our shit list that would never cross paths with known members. So that's the tactical advantage of having people in secrecy moving around. That's why I was never required to get, the face ink or the big I I actually never did earn my patch. I never did. I turned it down. I had the opportunity to take it, but that would require at that time it would have required me to give the green light on smashing the guy who brought me in. And his life was in my hands. And he ran up some bills, went to the shoe. Um, he didn't go to the shoe because of the bills, but he had some bills hanging up in the air. And he got in trouble and he went to the shoe. And while he was in the shoe, a lot of people started kind of coming forward. And when they came forward, they said, hey, this guy, he's been giving me the runaround and, just bad business. It's just bad business all around. And it was discussed on getting rid of him. Yeah, they pretty much came to me with it. And they said, hey, if you agree, and do it, you can get patched up. It's kind of fucked up to say that, but there's a lot of people. It's kind of a joked about thing that a lot of guys end up getting their getting their feather by knocking off the guy who brought them in. I don't know why that's like an automatic in, but apparently it is. At least that's from what I understood. From what I understood, if I smashed him, if me and another bro smashed him because of him falling from grace, then, I was in. But I'm like, that's just fucked up, man, because like he's the only reason I'm even fucking with you guys. Literally. you know, like that's the only reason. He is the only reason. And that's my issue. That's always been a fault of my own. If I really fuck with one individual, I will ride with them. I will ride with them until the fucking wheels fall off. And that's how I got indicted. That's how I became a fucking gang member. Like it's just, it is a reoccurring flaw of mine that I have learned from. I have definitely learned from it. But I had taken it at face value that he was a good reflection of what I was signing up for. I knew what I was signing up for. For the most part, it was just an elite group that were known for being dangerous. And they're not a group that, you know, they're not trigger happy when it comes to recruiting. You gotta, you kind of already gotta be somebody. They want leaders. They want fighters and leaders. There's always going to be positions for foot soldiers and stuff, but on some level, you gotta have something going on up here, and you do. You gotta be able to handle yourself, and they gotta know that. They gotta know that for a fact. They are very stringent Now, do pieces of shits get recruited? Yeah. Yeah, they do, unfortunately. And that's something that's happens in every organization. Not every member, probably even most of the members, are probably not good reflections of what the original mission statement was about. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. So, up until Big Sandy, it was not required of me to tell people what I was. But after that happened, I had to operate on the assumption that this would travel, and it would travel like wildfire. And it did. It definitely did. And they had always, ever since my first USP, they have always asked me if I was. And I always told them, no, I wasn't. Because one of my first missions that I went on was with a dub ass member. And it wasn't dub ass business, it was actually circle business. So imagine a white boy. I did end up going and get something that holds the phone so I don't have to hold it like this in front of me. That's kind of uncomfortable. I probably am going to have to end up figuring out how to use the gimbal. But like I was saying, imagine you're a white boy, right? With just for argument's sake, and you get sent off. You get asked, and you agree to go on a mission with another guy, and you find out this guy is a skinhead, right? And you guys take care of you guys' business. And now the administration asks you if you're a skinhead everywhere you go after that. On some level, they're going to think that you and this guy are, obviously doing something. He's probably recruiting you. They're just immediately gonna jump to that assumption. And so they had assumed that I was one of them ever since. And so when they asked me, I would tell them no, because I couldn't confirm that for them. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up getting sent to only places that they can walk. I had to go where they weren't allowed. I had to willingly walk these places where they weren't allowed. And I did that for a living. So after that, after Big Sandy, like I said, I had to operate on the assumption that it was common knowledge. And I already knew how I would go about it after that point, because anybody else who is familiar with basically any other organization out there, they're going to know that these guys, when they're not allowed to be somewhere, they come right onto the yard and they say, I'm this. What's up? Who's got a problem? And something happens right then and there. The reason why that's handled like that is because it's just easier to do it that way. Otherwise, you guys are playing nice and, just lying to each other's faces. And it's really just a matter of who's going to stab the first in the back, the other in the back first. And to eliminate allowing yourself to be rocked to sleep, you instigate that, you provoke that interaction on your own terms, somewhere where you're ready, where the odds are a bit more in your favor. Now, I'm not telling you guys how to, successfully be a gang member in prison or anything. I'm just letting you guys know how I had to go about it, mentally. And it's nothing I'd sign up to do again. I'll tell you that. Definitely not. But I get to Atlanta and I go inside and I get brought into my first unit. And you already went through the whole fucking about 6, 7, 8, 9 hour intake process of moving from one holding cell to another holding cell to another holding cell. And there's like 50 of you guys crammed, jam packed into bullpens like fucking sardines in a can. Literally, there is no space for you to sit. There's no space to sit down. Like, you all are standing shoulder to shoulder, chest to chest. You guys are just packed in these fucking places, right? And it's just miserable. It's fucking miserable. It's hot. There's just a fucking 100 different rank ass body odors, and bad breath and morning breath and fucking coffee packet breath. And it's bad. It's definitely bad. So when you get to the unit, when you get to the unit that you're going to, you just want to hurry up and, get situated, get to your room, get you some real coffee, get you some real food, make your little moves and stuff. But the thing you have to go about first is you have to figure out who's all here, who all in your race is here, where are they going, where are they coming from. And you guys are going to end up grilling each other about, who do you know? Oh, you're over here. I got this guy that's been over here. Do you know him? Well, how about this guy? And you guys are going to sit there and kind of go and peck each other's brains and find it, search for any inconsistencies. You guys are going to basically interrogate one another, so you guys can find out if this is somebody that you have to worry about. And it's just, the whole process is just, it's fucking draining. Man, it's just draining. It gives me anxiety just thinking about it. But I get into the unit and I asked these guys that are there. They weren't natives. So I said, "Hey, how many natives are here?" And they're like, "Oh, there's just like I think he said two of them. There's only two in the unit." People usually know. You can ask any race. You can come in straight into the unit and ask any race how many natives are here. They're gonna know, because there's usually only a couple. There's usually only one, two, maybe three sometimes. That's like tops right there. And I was the third native. They said there's two here, and they even knew where they were heading. They're heading to Big Sandy, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm like, I already know these guys are going to, they're going to where I just came from. That may mean something, it may not, whatever. But now I have to find them. I have to introduce myself to them, and we have to start this little song and dance, right? So I see them. I finally find them. I don't even put my bag down. I don't take it to my room or anything. They told me what room I was in, and then they said that they were going to grab me a bed, but they had to go and figure out, where everybody else was going. They had to get everybody else situated, and usually that's about the last thing that they'll do. If not, right after lockdown, they'll bring you your mattress, or they'll take you to where you can go get one. Sometimes they got to go around and they got to go shake cells down and take people's extra mats, because when their cellie leaves, they'll grab the extra mat and they'll put it under their own and they'll sit on it. And for whatever reason, there's always an issue finding beds. So I go inside and they tell me there's two natives, and I ended up finding out what rooms they were in. So I already knew what rooms they were coming out of or were going to, but I didn't see them nowhere. And so I got my bag. It's sitting by the staircase, and I'm looking around. Where are some weapons? Okay, there's some broomsticks over here. There's a mop pail over there with the fucking thing that squeezes the mop. It's got like a lever that you push down and it like clamps the fucking mop and squeezes it. That could be a weapon. You snap the fucking lever off of it. You could use that as a little baton. Snap the broomstick in half. You could use that. You gotta look around. And I already know how Atlanta is. There's knives here. There's definitely knives here. And I finally see them. I see the natives. They're showering. So one's posted up outside the shower while the other one's inside. So they see me, and I have long hair, kind of like I do now, maybe a little longer. And so they knew I was native. So I came walking up to them. One's in the shower, one's standing outside. And I come up and I'm like, "What's up, man?" I said, "You guys the only chiefs here?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah. Anybody else come off the bus with you?" And I said, "No, it's just me." They're like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. What's up?" They're like, "Hey, where are you coming from?" And I said, "I'm coming from Big Sandy." And they're like, "Oh no shit. Hey, that's where me and this bro are going." I said, "Yeah, man, it's a pretty cool spot, man. It's a pretty nice spot." And they're like, "Hey, yeah, do they got this here? Do they got that there?" And I was like, "Yeah, they got all that stuff, man." I said, "It's a good yard." I said, they got a lot of good bros there. It's a bunch of Reggie Chiefs. I said, "They'll run a tight ship." I said, "As long as your paperwork is good, you'll be cool." And they were like, "Oh, okay." And then they ended up switching, right? The smaller one was outside with me. And then the bigger one, he stepped out. So he was like putting his shirt on and he was still drying off with the towel. And we're surrounded, right? We're surrounded by people walking to and from and, doing things and all that. So we're just kind of in the middle of a crowd, you know, trying to determine whether or not we're enemies while all this is going on around us. And so he's like, I said, where else you guys coming from? And I don't remember where they said. Could have been Hazleton, Lee County, who knows? I know they weren't coming from anywhere where I was, but yeah, I think they were both coming from the East Coast somewhere. And I was like, "Oh, that's what's up." And they're like, "Where you all been?" And I named off all the joints that I had. I said Beaumont, SMU. I said then Big Sandy. And they're like, "Dang, you got around, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, I get around." And he's like, "Hey, why'd you leave Big Sandy?" I said, "Oh, I got jumped there." And he just kind of like, he looked at me and he's like, "Oh yeah, why they jump you?" And I said, "Because I'm Warrior Society." Now, as soon as I said that, I'm like literally just beaming right into his eyes. Like, I'm gonna read everything there is to know, whatever there is to see, whatever goes through your head, whatever's on your face, I'm gonna see it. And he was no mystery. He was no mystery at all. I knew it. As soon as I said it, and I seen him stop for a second and kind of like kind of looked up and looked to the side, and he was like, "Oh well, and the other bro was wrapping up about this time, so that he was coming out of the shower too." And they're like, "Oh okay, yeah, well, that's what's up. That's cool. Well, hey man, well it's just us here. You know how it is. Um, we're gonna jump out the shower, finish drying off. We're gonna get you a little care package together, and we'll bring it to you. We'll stop by your cell and we'll bring it to you." And I said, "All right, that's cool, man." I said, Thanks for looking out. I said, "All right, I'll talk to you guys in a bit." And they're like, "All right, man, that's what's up." And they shook hands with me, right? Now, on the surface, that shit looked pretty. It would have looked cool. It would have looked natural. But I had already known. My sense was fucking going off. It was telling me it's go time. They're gonna get you. Like, you know it. I know it. You saw what I saw. They're gonna get you. And so I watched him go upstairs, and I'm watching him walk down the tier, and I seen one stop at one cell, and I seen the other one go further down to his cell. And I'm standing there. I haven't moved. I'm still standing, slightly in front of the showers, a little off to the side, and I'm watching them, and I start looking around. I'm looking at everybody, and I'm looking at like, is there just somebody that just off the look that I think that I could appeal to for a weapon, you know? And I was like, fuck it, man. I was like, well, let's get this shit over with. And I started walking to the stairs, and I got to the stairs, and I started coming up. And when I got to the top, I seen the youngster come out, and he went down the tier. He didn't even look behind him. You know, normally a person comes out and they'll kind of look around and they'll step out on the tier and they'll lean on the bars, or they're a little bit more nonchalant about it. But the way he came out and didn't even look to his right and just made a beeline right to his boy's cell, I knew there was something brewing. So I gave it a few seconds, and I didn't pay attention to where the cell further down was. I didn't pay attention to who was coming out of it or if they peeked out or anything. I was still just kind of looking around like, damn, man, this is crazy. What did I get myself into? The fuck? What kind of reality is this? Like, is this really what my life has come to? Just one fucking incident after the other. You know, it's definitely times like that you you just kind of you exist in a space that's just kind of nothingness. Like you're just waiting for the next cell you're going to be stuck in. That's literally what it felt like. And so I gave it, like I said, I gave it about a minute or two, and then I walked down to his cell, and we got about maybe 10 minutes before lockdown, right? So there's a lot of movement. A lot of people they're moving around, they're making moves, they're getting ready for the night, they're on the phone, they're hitting the showers, they're hitting the microwave, they're hitting up the storeman. A lot of movement, a lot of buzz, a lot of activity. And I get down to their cell, and I noticed that there's, all the way down the tier, they got people sitting with their chairs along the tier, and they've got their headphones on and they're watching the TVs and stuff. And I didn't pay any attention to any of them. They just post up, and that's where they sit for the rest of the day. Usually paisas and stuff, or lifers will do that. A lot of the times other people there, unless they got what they need for the day, they'll sit there. But for the most part, everybody's making moves. Everybody's running around, trying to get high, trying to get money, trying to call home, trying to get something to eat. But I opened the door, and when I opened the door, I seen them both standing there, and they kind of turned around, they looked at me, and they just kind of immediately just like tried to look disinterested but busy at the same time. And I came in, and I opened. I didn't come in, but I opened the door, and I stood in the doorway, and I said, yeah, man. I said, well, do we lock down at 9 o'clock here or 9:15? And they were like, um, yeah, it's about 9:30. The other one's like, yeah, about 9:15. And he's like, yeah, 9:15. And they kind of looking around. And they both look uncomfortable, right? And I said, damn. I said, last time I came through here, it was like 10 o'clock lockdown. I said, man, they just keep slicing off our keep slicing off our free time, huh? And they're just like, yeah, man, that shit's crazy, huh? They just kind of, like, I know they're not hearing anything I'm actually saying right now. So I know they're not hearing anything that I'm saying right now, right? And they're both just kind of sitting there. Like, one was like standing on the top. He was standing there, and he was like writing on something on the top bunk. And the other was just kind of like leaning against the wall, like looking at the fucking wall, like up at the ceiling and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, man, it's just crazy, I said, every time I come through here, we just keep losing more and more time to be out at night. And I said, what's it take to get a mattress around here, man? I said, this motherfucker been telling me he's gonna grab me one. I said, he hasn't yet. I said, he's running around getting everybody else a mat, and I'm just bombarding them with small talk, right? Because the more I do this, the more and more it's becoming apparent that they're not hearing anything that I'm saying. They're not even responding correctly. they're so distracted on and what they're about to do. And that's all I'm doing, right? I'm just really confirming it. And I don't really know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm not going to go into the room. That's especially on a 2-on-1 situation. That's definitely, if you don't have a weapon, that's not something you want to do. And while I was standing there and I was talking to them, and I'm just kind of moving freely a lot like I am right now. I'm just standing there swinging my arms around, just trying to look and sound oblivious as fuck to their intentions, because I need them to think that I don't know what's going on when I really do. And while I was doing that, the way these they had their room off, or not the room off, they had their rooms lights taped over with a some colored paper. It was like blue, so the whole room was like this dark blue. This kind of like had this construction paper or newspaper or something over it. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't its natural light. So the light from out behind, out into the unit, was super bright, right? It was all the way in front of me, in front of the along the cell floor. My silhouette and the door frame was on the cell floor, right in front of me. So while I'm talking to them, and I was sitting there, and I'm just filling up the fucking the space with noise, and I started to see that light that was highlighting my shadow started to like close really fast. And at first I was like, what the fuck, did the lights go off behind me or something? But it was the way it had moved from right to left that I realized somebody was shutting the door behind me. And so I immediately stepped back. I put my arms up and I stepped back, and that door slammed into me and crunched me against the door jamb. And somebody was standing behind it and trying to push it closed like this. And I'm like, I turn around and I look, and I'm just through the little window slit that I could see. I looked and I could see some little short paisa dude was trying to close the door on me. He wasn't a native. I know that much. And when I seen that, I looked in front of me and I seen both of these guys were advancing on me, and they had these plastic little knives out. And so I pushed the door frame off me, and I backed up, and they both came jumping out at me. They started advancing towards me. So I back up, and when I backed up, we're on the top tier, so there's just about 5-6 feet of a walkway with about a 3.5 foot high rail to my right. And they came out of the room, and they had their knives out, and they were jumping around. They were like, "What's up? What's up?" And I'm backing up, and I got my arms up, and I'm thinking to myself, "This is it." It's like, this is it. I'm finally joining the ranks of all my bros who've been stabbed and everybody else. And like, I have been waiting for this for a while, because I hadn't experienced this yet. I've never actually gotten stabbed. And I'm thinking, it's got to happen at some point. There's no way that I could leave prison, federal prison, USPs, without ever getting fucking stabbed. Not when you've participated in that kind of lifestyle to the degree that I have. There's just no way that karma would allow that to happen, right? Like, it's gonna happen. And I had to steel myself for it for a long time. I'm like, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. One of these days, I'm gonna get got. Just like a lot of the people that I've got, they got. Nobody is impervious, So I'm backing up, and I'm thinking to myself, this is it. It's finally happening. It's finally gonna happen. I'm gonna get fucking stabbed. I'm gonna fuck around and find out. And I was backing up, and I had my arms up, and I was backpedaling, and I'm like, I remember saying shit. I'm just like saying whatever I could think of. I'm like, I'm like, oh, that's what's up. That's what's up. I was like, oh, you need weapons, huh? You need weapons, huh? I was like, because now there's another guy that's with them. Whoever was standing behind the door trying to close me in, he was dancing along behind the other two, and I was just saying whatever, right? I'm like, oh yeah, you need weapons. I said, three of you both y'all need weapons. I said, y'all motherfuckers need knives, and like, I'm just saying whatever. I'm just trying to get any kind of a low blow in that might make one of them be like, motherfucker, I don't need the knife, and throw it to the side or whatever. But they're advancing towards me, and I'm backing up, and I got my hands up, and I'm like, I'm firing off at the mouth. What do you, is that what you want to do? That's what you want to do? That's what you need? That's how you need to do it. And I'm just saying whatever. I don't even know, but I'm just saying whatever I could think of. And all of a sudden, they just stopped. They stopped right where they were. And so I stopped, and there's only about 6 feet between the two of us, or myself and them. And when they stopped, they had the knives in their hand like this, and then they kind of tucked it down, by their side, and they kind of straightened up, and I seen where they were looking. They were looking down to the right, behind me, by the CO's office actually. And so, the whole fucking unit is just dead quiet, right? There's no noise. Everybody's watching. And so I turn around and I look, and I'm looking down at the CO's office where they're looking at. And both of the COs are just standing there. There was one like chubby ass white dude, and there was a big tall black CO, and he was super fucking stocky as fuck. And they're both just standing there. They're just watching, right? They're just standing there like this, looking up at us. And I turned around and I looked at them, and they both just kind of like they turned around and they started walking off, like like we weren't doing shit, like we weren't doing nothing. You know, you didn't see nothing. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I turned around, and I tried to make it look like I didn't do shit either, right? So I start walking, and the CO stepped out and they locked the door, and the big black guy pointed up at me like this, and he's like, come here. And I'm like, I'm looking around like, I know you ain't talking to me, shit, And he comes over, and he gets to the stairs, and he comes up, and I'm standing at the end of the tier, and I'm trying to just look like nothing's going on, right? Like, because I can't just willingly go with the fact that I know where this is going. They're coming to get me, and that's exactly what he did. He came up the stairs and he said, "Come here, man." And I said, "What?" And he's like, "Come here." I said, "What, man?" I said, "I didn't do nothing. I didn't do nothing. You got no issue with me. I didn't do shit." And he was like, "Nah, man." He's like, "I ain't gonna let you fucking get killed on my shift." He's like, "Come here." So they both COs, they come over there and they grab me, and they lead me out the unit. And as soon as we stepped out the unit, they turn around, they locked the door, and they got me standing in the hallway. And the CO was like, "What's up with you?" And I'm like, "What? I didn't do nothing, man. I didn't do nothing." I said, "You can't write a shot for shit. I didn't do shit." And he's like, "No, why do these guys just draw down on you like that?" And I said, "I don't know." He goes, is your paperwork fucked up? You got some fucked up charges or something? I said, "Hell no, man." I said, "You can check my shit." I said, "Ain't nothing fucked up about me." And he's like, "Well, why they trying to get at you?" And I said, "I don't even know them, man." I said, "I just came into the unit." I said, "I came into the unit. I introduced myself." I said, I went up to the fucking cell, tried to make some small talk." And he's like, "Nah, man." He goes, "You're not being honest with me." He goes, "What is it? You guys set tripping? Different sets?" And I said, "I don't know, man. I don't know." And he's like, "Oh, whatever, man." He goes, and they take me to a whole another unit. Now, that was this is the last time that I got close to really getting got. And I should have. I absolutely should have. I still, to this day, I have no idea. I mean, other than the fact that they didn't want They didn't want to take the chance of killing me. They didn't want the shot. They really didn't want to do it. I don't know. But I know that they probably thought to themselves, because the guys that were committed to that kind of lifestyle, they would have did it. They would have did it. It doesn't matter if the fucking COs are there, if teachers are there, females, the warden. None of that shit matters. It didn't matter to me in Beaumont. We did it right there at lunchtime in the chow hall. Everybody was there. Fucking the warden, associate warden, SIS, LTs, all of them were there. And I know a lot of people they say shit like, oh, it's not supposed to go down there. So that, yeah, but when you're dealing with a unit on a unit and they're separate yards, chow hall was the literally next possible opportunity that we could meet each other. That's why I went down in the chow hall. It was literally the next possible moment that we could get at each other. There was no waiting. So when it comes to getting your guy, the fact that a CO is looking is not reason in itself to not go through with it. If I and somebody else went to go smash somebody off the yard because we were supposed to, and we didn't do it, and we came back and said, "Oh, the CO looked at us," we're getting fucking smashed. And I'm almost positive I've seen people get smashed for, not getting their guy at all costs. That's literally what it is. It is at all fucking costs. You have to get your man at all costs. But these guys didn't. They weren't told to. But I'm guessing that they assumed going to Big Sandy, especially with so many other people here going with them to Big Sandy, they didn't want it to come to light that they were in the same unit as me and didn't do anything to me, because that in itself could be reason enough for them to, I don't know, maybe not get smashed, but at least get looked at funny. You know, I think maybe they did. Maybe they did want to, they wanted the possibility of saying that they got me so that they could get there and, be welcomed in and, all that stuff. But they didn't go through with it. And I don't know who they were. I never got their names. They're out there. They're out there somewhere. And they too will probably see this video someday if I make it super, super famous one day, or if this channel and this video is just around long enough. A lot of people who get out of prison are interested in watching and listening to other guys who have been in prison. So it is definitely within the realm of possibility, but they didn't get me. And that was the last close encounter that I had all the way up until I got out. I'm glad I didn't. But all my yards after that were Dub S yards. So I didn't have to go through the whole process of saying what I was and having to worry whether or not I would get attacked. But yeah, it's crazy, crazy life. I am beyond relieved that shit is over with. And no, I don't represent them anymore, and I don't claim them. I'm not in contact with them. I've never been in contact with them a day in my life since I left prison. And that's because I had come to find out I had no intentions of continuing that shit beyond prison anyway, and I had told them that when I first joined. I said, for as long as I am in prison, I am your man. I said, but I'm not doing all that other shit. But I wanted to spin back around on where I was going when I said I doubt that this particular individual is in contact with the guy we got in Beaumont. And that's because when it happened, when it went down in the chow hall, if there was one person that I would have absolutely credited for being one of the first to move, it was him. I definitely thought that he would, he would draw still and get busy immediately. I for sure, there was a handful of them that I knew would probably go, and I knew who I knew was on the fence. But the guy who reached out to me in one of my TikTok videos, he didn't do anything. And I've already said that, right? I've already told everybody that when it came down to it, nobody moved for him. And that's a common thing. It's a common thing that I think you guys probably heard on a number of occasions now, is that you will get these motherfuckers will leave you out to dry. They will walk all the way right up to the edge with you, and then they will leave you out to dry. They will throw you under the bus. There's no real loyalty. These guys had his back, declared war on me. This was all through a fence, by the way, because there were separate yards. But I had this guy dead to rights. We'd already voted. It was going to get smashed. I gave them the option. They could do it themselves, or I would do it. But I knew they weren't going to do it, because most of them were under his thumb, under his banner, his leadership, right? So, but I knew he wouldn't. I knew he wasn't repping this particular bro's affiliation from the streets, but he's a Southern bro. Southern chiefs aren't going to rep Northern native gangs and then go back home with that shit on them. But he was down. He was down, and he had his bros back, and I thought for sure he would jump for him. And he is the only one who did attempt to do something, because when it actually happened, and first it was me, then another one joined me, and while me and another guy were getting my guy, I could overhear basically commands that my other two bros were giving these guys, because we had cut them off. I had got my guy en route to this group. They had stepped to the back of the chow hall and set their trays down, and nobody ate, nobody sat down. They all stood against the back wall. I had sat further ahead, and some of the other bros that would help me had already got up and left, dumped their trays, and made it look like they were walking out the chow hall. So they really were under the impression that I really was by myself, and I'm from the drug program, and all my help is from the drug program. So they really thought that we weren't going to do anything, and that I wasn't going to do anything. And so they made no attempt whatsoever to meet their man halfway and escort him through the tables to where the rest of them were hanging out. They all stood there and waited, and it was while my target was approaching our tables that I cut him off and attacked him away from the group. And when that happened, before they could join and step forward and do anything, three other bros came out of nowhere and stood between them and me and their fearless leader. And my bros, my help, they basically, I could hear them yelling at them, do something, do something. Where's all that energy at now? Yeah, y'all ain't gonna do shit, are you? Look at your boy. The whole time I'm getting my guy, and I could hear them saying, look at your boy, look at your boy, look at that shit. You motherfuckers did that. You did that. And that bro must have stepped forward or stood up or did something,
because then I heard him basically giving him like a fucking like a felony stop or something. They were like, drop the knife, drop the fucking knife, now get on the ground, get on the fucking ground, look away from me. you know and so they made this guy literally get on the ground, drop his knife and get on the ground. I don't know how many they made get on the ground, but they made somebody get on the fucking ground. And when they realized that none of these guys were going to do anything, they turned around and they abandoned them and they ran over and they joined me. And that's how that turned into a 4-on-1. So, do I think he's in direct contact with him after he basically abandoned this guy to his fate? Probably not. But I can't take that chance. I can't take that chance. He may or may not have. Who knows? But in any event, if you guys enjoy the stories, feel free to leave a like and a comment. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would really appreciate it if you do subscribe. Kind of wanting the channel to get in a little bit more traction, and I need all the help I can get. Hopefully everybody, you and yours, are all doing well. Stay safe and stay blessed.